Last time on Dad and Boy Adventures, Kratos went into a big holy light thing and we got the thing we needed, so off we
Man.
go.
I don't know why, but when you said Dad and Boy Adventures, my mind jumped immediately to the 90s version of Johnny Quest.
Oh, the one with like
I
the
thought
VR.
of some like weird. Yeah, I thought of some weird like Bill and Ted ripoff. It's just Dad and Boy. So you just Kratos and Atreus just doing that pose in front of the phone booth.
Excellent.
No, it's not. No, it's not. No, it's not a phone booth. It's like a Greek chariot or something.
Greek chariot, sure.
Tell me that I'm not the only one here who watched the New Adventures of Johnny Quest. I think it was
I
the New
did. It was
Adventures.
on. It was on Toonami for a bit, so I remember it. But
Yeah, it's like, wow, what an unremarkable show. But for some reason,
It's like I only caught a couple of episodes like as I happened to be tuning into Toonami because I was getting ready to. I think it was like before Dragon Ball, or maybe Sailor Moon when it aired. But I only gave it any sort of time of the day because I recall watching a bit of like old school Johnny Quest, but thinking, man, this is really fucking vanilla. Like I'm getting nothing out of this.
it's
Yeah.
an old Hanna-Barbera cartoon. So what do you expect?
Honestly,
Well, I
most
mean-
of them are just not very good anymore.
I mean, they were designed to be made on the cheap, and that's about it.
yeah, but like, the New Adventures of Johnny Quest was an attempt to modernize that. I suppose you could call it like an older version of what's the Scooby-Doo show where Velma is a snarky asshole?
Oh, Mystery Incorporated? Yeah.
It's kind of like an older version of that.
It's
except
weird
not as
whenever
good.
you see like high budget Scooby-Doo, considering that you know that the old show was made on the budget of 3 bags of potato chips and
Well-
a Bed Bath and Beyond coupon. So
We had a bit of a smoother transition between old low budget Scooby-Doo and new high budget Scooby-Doo because we had like the movies like Witch's Ghost and whatnot. Those were
Scooby-Doo-
generally pretty good budget stuff, you know.
Scooby-Doo also never really went away, whereas Johnny Quest had the original show, and then it appeared like 30 years later.
Yeah.
Did you know that Scooby-Doo and the Zombie Island is technically an anime because it was animated in Japan?
a lot of
A lot of stuff from American made was.
I mean, there were-
Yeah, I mean, like,
Batman,
Avatar.
Batman the animated series was animated. In
You
Japan,
called
so-
Avatar an anime?
No,
Lewis?
I'm talking about it like literally
Take that
animated
back.
by what is it, Studio Pierrot? It's a Japanese studio,
Yeah.
you know. So like just by that logic, it's anime.
Yeah, it's actually kind of one of the things that I've found shocking, like growing up later and finding out that most of my favorite like Western animations were outsourced to like
Japan.
Japanese, Korean studios as well. Like,
Korea's a big place now, yeah.
some of them Korea's another place to get them animated. Yeah,
Well, that's partially because like apart from like maybe a few specific companies, there aren't that many big animation studios in the West. So
Even
like,
the ones
if
that you would think that have big animation.
well, not for television.
yeah,
I would
yeah.
think. Maybe
Not,
for
not,
movies.
well, I
yeah.
mean, for movies, but that's kind of a different proposition with a different methodology to the way it works. But like for television, there's really only the anime studios. So
I mean, like even Warner Brothers, who you think would have a decently sized animation division because like they do a lot of animated TV in the 90s, like several Animaniacs episodes and some other stuff were outsourced to Japan. So, you know,
yeah, I mean, like it's at a point where if creatively, if you have a project that's animated and you need a big coordinated team to do it, it just makes more sense to get one of the big Japanese studios or one of the big Korean studios on it, rather than trying to put together one locally, which would be more time consuming and expensive.
I mean, that does lead to some lost in translation moments, which can be really funny. I think it's Dexter, where one of the notes was, like, after the show, the audience takes off, as in leaves the amphitheater or something, but due to translation issues, they took it as actually taking off. And instead of fixing it, they just went with, instead of fixing it, they just went with it and just added funny sound effects to it.
I did not know that. God, I need to go back and watch the old cartoons. It's too bad Powerpuff Girls ended up being kind of like middling.
Bad.
I would say
do
bad. It
Powerpuff
has
Girls?
yeah. I mean, it has its moments, but like it's very different in tone from the original. It's kind of like the cartoon series had this kind of like effortless snark to it. That was almost in the Ghostbusters sense cerebral. Although I hesitate to use that exact word because it gives me Vietnam War flashbacks to the
I
Ghostbusters
feel like
reboot controversy.
you were more into, like, comparatively speaking, compared to Cartoon Network and Nickelodeon in its heyday. I'm talking like late 90s, early 2000s. If you were watching Nickelodeon, you were more likely into the gross out humor.
Yeah.
Because that was kind of Nickelodeon's MO at that time. Cartoon Network, it was very, like you said, cerebral, dry.
Yeah.
Which I appreciate more growing up as a teenager.
It was a nice middle ground between
I mean,
kind of the more adult, snarky WB and the gross out Nick.
it's not to say that Cartoon Network lacked that kind of humor, though. I mean, Cow and Chicken
Yeah.
exists, but
And by no means am I calling like the Nickelodeon stuff immature, because God knows I watched all that shit growing up.
yeah, but
anyway.
like it's a different tone and a different
Yes.
emphasis than Ren and Stimpy, for example.
It's very awkward to go watch Rugrats now when you're the age of the adults now.
And
There's a clip that I saw on Twitter where
The other-
Stu is
Yippee,
like,
school's out. Stu, you're 35 years old.
oh
yeah, and New Powerpuff Girls New Powerpuff Girls had its moments and its good episodes. I kind of liked Bliss. But like, okay, it's really obvious that it's trying to be funny in a modern sense, which is a very different brand of humor than what it was back in the day. And honestly, I think what it was back in the day holds up better. Like, the humor in New Powerpuff Girls is already kind of badly aged.
What was the new Powerpuff Girls again? Was that just a couple years ago?
2016, I think, something like
Like
that.
that one was the one that went really hard on the memes, right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
and
kind
it wasn't well written.
Okay. I think that's because I think that's kind of the issue you have when you. To me, I think television shows, especially today, can't rely on meme culture because social media already does that. And it's tiring to see.
Well, I mean, it's also like it's an ongoing story, you know. It's ever changing. What's funny one week might be a bit trite the next.
So here's
what's
the
funny
thing.
last month might come back 2 years later for no apparent reason.
So, like, when we reference a meme and we upload a video, like, 2 months later, it's already out of date. So when you're making an animation, and at the absolute earliest, that episode comes out 6 months later, like, you're a dinosaur by that point in meme time.
I mean, if you remember back when like
Yeah.
all the scary
You're not
/
just-
epic movie stuff was happening, it's like they would reference movies that weren't even out yet in their trailers because they knew that's how it worked.
That's pretty much what killed it,
you're
along
not
with
just-
the writing just not being.
You're not
very
just a
good.
dinosaur. You're the subject of a "Your Dinosaurs Are Wrong" episode. So like,
That sounds like that's like the title of a video I see on YouTube.
it's actually a pretty long running series where this guy takes these old ass outdated dinosaur toys and goes over like dinosaur anatomy and how bad
You leave
the
my
toys used
plastic dinosaurs alone, all right?
Like, they'll take the old classic wooden Tyrannosaurus Rex skeleton model, for example. You know, we all had one of those when we were kids. And he'll talk about how many problems there are with the anatomy of it. It's a good series. It's a relaxing one to watch, kind of like Folding Ideas, but with dinosaurs. But, you know, setting that aside, new Powerpuff Girls, how do I put this?
Write it.
I enjoy it at least half the time, but the other half of the time kind of makes me want to fall asleep. So, like,
When did New Powerpuff Girls come out?
I said somewhere around like 2016, 2017.
we're going in circles.
Yeah, it wasn't that long ago, but who can keep track of the passage of time nowadays?
But like the sort of joke that New Powerpuff Girls writes is that before the professor spilled chemical X into the vat that created the Powerpuff Girls, he spilled chemical Y into another vat and created Bliss. Basically a Powerpuff Girl who can't control her powers. And then at the end of that punchline, they look to the corner of the room where all these broken beakers are, and it's chemicals A through whatever. And it's like, you really should clean that up one of these days. And it's like, okay. At that point, you've run the joke into the ground, and it really should have died 2 lines ago. And that's the kind of humor that pervades the show. It's really common in modern cartoon writing, you know?
Oh, it's like the Sonic Colors issue, where it's like you got a good joke, but then you keep hammering it into the ground.
Yes.
That sort of
Yes,
thing.
it's a very common sort of writing for modern Western cartoons, and
Do you see any other
Modern Powerpuff Girls is one of those shows that leans into that. So, like, it has its moments, but overall, I wouldn't call it a good show. But that said, there are still some really good episodes in there. It's like worth experiencing if you're willing to give it like half of your attention for half an hour a day. But you know, yeah. I hate talking about these middle of the road productions because then I just get beaten up by people on all sides who think I'm defending something shit or criticizing something.
I don't think you
that's
really
amazing.
should be giving a shit about what they say.
I
though.
know, but it's just annoying because I can't have an interesting conversation with anyone about it because everyone swings so far down one extreme or the other that they just don't want to
You
hear
can't
anything
be
in the middle of
neutral
the
about
road.
There's no
anything.
nuance. Yeah, there's no nuance. Like, there's no discussion. There's no nuance. It's always
It's
right or wrong.
It's like trying to have a conversation about a movie on the way out of the movie theater, and everyone else in the car just they want to stop the conversation at it was good or it was bad. And it's like, you guys are so boring. Why do you hate fun?
There's a reason. What is the name of the movie ranking thing? That
IMDb.
no, the one that gets people as soon as they walk out of the.
Oh, Rotten Tomatoes.
No,
Rotten
not
Tomato.
Rotten Tomatoes. There's one that gives an A through F ranking as soon as people walk out of the theater, and almost every movie gets at least an A. If you get a B, then it's like actually like really, really bad.
What do we do wrong?
The 3-point scale for video game reviews.
Yeah.
Oh, so now is it just 3-point scale? Because remember back in the day it was 4 points.
Well, no, I'm more
It's-
talking about how it's like 10's fantastic, 9's amazing, 8's middling, and anything from 7 or below is terrible.
Well, in the first couple of days after a movie's theatrical release, that like a slightly low rating is a good warning sign because the people who went out to see a movie on day one are the ones most excited to see it. And those are the ones who are most predisposed to be forgiving of its flaws.
Well,
Like-
the thing is that people. The general point is that people have very low standards.
Expectations for
Like if you
standards,
the average person going to a movie just wants to see the movie and have fun and then leave.
Yeah,
which is
and
why
not think too
most
hard
get
about
an
it.
A. And if something gets a B, that means that like maybe it's half and half that liked it versus didn't like it. So again, since
Yeah,
most
but
people like
that's-
the movies they go and see. Actually,
like-
the funny thing is if you get an F, it's actually a better sign than if you got a B because movies that will get an F are ones that like generally have like a big twist in them or maybe were different than what they were advertised or like have some controversial subject matter or something.
Yeah,
So they
yeah,
require
I
you to
get you.
think and generally speaking
Audiences
people
don't
don't
like
like
to
to be
think, sorry.
challenged is
That
the
reminds
moral
me
the
of
story.
that reminds me of a conversation in Persona 3 where I think it was Junpei talks about how he wants the villains in his movies to just be villains and not be sympathetic. Like it's
Congratulations, Junpei, you're the average moviegoer.
like if he winds up I think it's a scene that happens if you go to the movies with him on a specific calendar day. He goes in all excited and then comes out disappointed because the villain was sympathetic and it made him feel weird things and he just doesn't really want to think about the movie too much. So
I feel weird things.
so like
Junpei.
so it's like I guess it wasn't the particular moral fantasy that he particularly liked, the one where it's a hero against a
Mustache
real
twirling bad
villain.
guy.
And you know, for the character who wields a two-handed sword exactly like a baseball bat, I'm not surprised that was his opinion of that movie. But, like, okay, so like. I guess what my point was, though, to add on to that is that, like, you're not particularly going to get a nuanced rating on a movie until days or even weeks later, because the people who approach a movie with a calmer and more critical mindset are also probably the people who were willing to wait a couple weeks to watch a movie until their paycheck came in, you know?
Or not be swayed by crowd, or not be annoyed by crowds hooting and hollering at every little thing.
That too, yeah.
Oh my god, Captain America said the thing.
Listen, okay.
I'm not gonna give people shit
No,
for that though.
no,
Watching
I
a
know,
movie with
it's
an
just-
excited
it's just-
crowd is its own like joy.
Well, I
Yeah.
mean, you could at least keep it like
It's
a
one of those
little
things.
moderate.
It's one of those you either really love it or you hate it, and it's just someone. It's like I want to sit here and watch.
I'd
the
say
movie.
like if you really want to avoid that kind of crowd, but you're adamant on seeing it in the theaters, just go early morning.
yeah.
Well, if you can, it's
Like-
it's not always that easy, but
Yeah, I know. Sometimes they don't have a choice, but it's also like I'm not going to give a crowd a shit for having fun.
Well,
in
I
the theater.
mean,
That's
yeah,
kinda
but at the same
easy to see in
time,
the
I don't want to
theater.
be there when it happens. It's the same reason I never play an MMO.
Right, right.
It's the same reason I never play an MMO during the first 2 weeks after a new expansion because I just don't like it when all the players are crowded around all the quest givers.
You are a coward.
No, it's like I can't immerse myself in this world when I'm being reminded so brutally that it's a video game. You know.
when do we get to the game? This is the game. Yippee!
It's like, you know, I didn't turn off all the player names so that I could see my character buried in a bunch of models that are clipping through each other, you know? It's just that kind of thing. But
well,
like,
you see, Lewis, now you don't even have the choice of whether or not you want to play the new expansion within 2 weeks of release. So,
oh,
you
I
know.
do. I already bought the game. They just suspended new game purchases and new accounts. I have an account. I have the game. I could buy the expansion whenever I want and just jump right in after a 2-hour wait, of course. But, you know,
No, it's not bad anymore. Like ever since they disabled noob sales and the free trial, especially queues are.
Wait,
pretty
are
much
you
back to
saying
where
that
they
I
were
can no
before.
longer get the free trial to Final Fantasy
Oh,
XIV,
no.
the
Go away.
award-winning
Leave.
expansion?
right, yeah,
up
that
to level
would've-
60?
I have no idea what you're talking about.
that would have been a major contributor because they did shift to a much more generous World of Warcraft-like free trial system, didn't they?
Yeah,
The only
like after they disabled the free trial, queues it pretty much went back to normal.
the only difference between
So it was your fault.
the only difference between their free trial now and World of Warcraft's is that you can't go back into a free trial after your subscription expires. So if you have an account, you're locked out of the free trial with that account.
It's just, you know, it was just really funny to see people waiting longer for playing Final Fantasy XIV than they would for, like, Space Mountain at Disney World. You know, it's just like...
Wait, if we talk about, I want to ride the triangle.
Oh, I love.
you
You
seen
watched
that?
Defunct
Yeah, I've
Lands
seen that
out
too.
Yes,
like.
I've watched that.
This isn't
entire,
Shape
that
Lands.
video is a
Oh,
video is
man,
a ride.
that's one of the best things I've ever watched in my whole
In
life.
order to do that, you'd have to actually hire a civil engineer who can also part 5. So I hired a civil engineer.